You've done the shadow work, and the worst is over on today's Obleron divination. Greetings, everyone. I am Obleron, Lord of the Underworld and consort to the most lovely Hecate. Thank you for joining me on today's elemental synastry reading. It is a divination technique which was bestowed upon me by the goddess upon our sacred marriage. It involves the tarot, the 5 elements, and astrology. Now, this is a timeless collective reading, so take what resonates and discard what doesn't. And as always, use these divination readings to confirm what you already intuitively know, and do not take this as literal advice. And for everyone who's been interacting with my content by liking, subscribing, and commenting and sharing, you have my heartfelt thanks and deepest gratitude, and I deeply appreciate all of you. Okay, so we start off by drawing the tarot card to see what influences each element. And the first element we start with is the element of spirit, which is represented by the bell. Okay, so we have the inverted 10 of swords. We've been getting a lot of 10s lately. 10 of wands, 10 of swords, all these kind of end of the cycle type of cards. And, it makes sense. This reading is recorded at the end of 2025. And, even though it's a timeless collective reading, there still is some significance of when it was recorded. So, yeah, we're finishing up a cycle. We're finishing up a lot of things, especially going from 2025 to 2026. There's been a lot of talk of going from the year of the snake to the year of the horse. I mean, that's all over the internet right now with all of these readings. I actually follow a lot of other tarot readers and diviners, I guess you could call them, just to kind of get my thumb on the pulse of what's happening, and to kind of read these readings sort of like reading the weather. It's like, well, what's going on around the world type of thing. And the end of a cycle seems to really be a common theme of the past couple of months, especially with the shedding of the old to go into the new. That seems to be a huge theme with this past year going into next year. And the inverted 10 of swords is very representative of that, where the upright 10 of swords would represent more of, the end of the cycle. The inverted version of it would suggest that, the worst is over. And, that definitely is is some good news for I'm sure a lot of us. A lot of us have been through a lot in 2025, and this, to know that the worst is over is really an optimistic reading, especially when it's coming to us in spirit. Spirit is saying that, last year we had to do a lot of growing. We had to do a lot of soul searching. Some of us were probably betrayed. Some of us probably we don't have a lot of people in our lives anymore that were there at the beginning of the year. We could have had a drastic move. We could have, any number of things could have happened to us. But whatever it was that we went through in 2025, now, going into 2026, it's a good time, especially during this transitionary period, to just leave it behind. Leave it in the past. It's the past. Learn the lessons, move on, and just go into the future a little bit wiser, a little bit more aware, and perhaps maybe a little bit more level-headed. However we may resonate with that. But the worst is over, and Spirit is trying to let us know that. Excellent. So let's see what the astrology die have to say to it. So the astrology die can represent advice or possible outcomes. So we have the sun in Aquarius in the first house. Wow, okay. Let me move this around. All right, Sun in Aquarius in the first house. And I roll once for the house, and I roll a second time for the decan. All right, so we got the third decan of Aquarius. Okay, so that third decan, of Aquarius is that Seven of Swords energy. It is the Lord of unstable effort. It generally involves a lot of deceit. It involves betrayal. So this would suggest, well, especially mixed in with that Sun energy, especially in the first house too, is that perhaps, we could have been deceiving ourselves and perhaps lying to ourselves in a lot of our personal endeavors. Perhaps we were lying to ourselves about, who we thought the people were in our lives, because, red flags, they're always there. It's just a question of, whether or not we actually choose to see it. And this would suggest that, yeah, part of the deception was self-deception. Especially with, like I said, that first house in Aries, as well as the Sun influencing that too. That the Sun is really about ourselves and our brightest moments. The Sun usually is a very, very uplifting and optimistic type of placement. I mean, it's the Sun. So, yeah, definitely on some level, especially with that third decan of Aquarius being influenced by the Moon, even though we may have had this sort of bravado and boisterous attitude and seemingly like we were knowing where we were going and like we knew who we are, deep down inside, perhaps, with that third decan of Aquarius, we were perhaps untrue to ourselves in some way. And again, regardless of whatever happened in the past, it doesn't really matter, because Spirit is telling us that the worst is over. We've learned those lessons, and now it's time to really step into our own. It's really time to step into the light and to be who we are meant to be. So going into the future, let us not deceive ourselves anymore. Let us not lie to ourselves anymore. If there's a situation, or if there's a person or a potential relationship that brings up red flags, it's a lot easier to just walk away from it here on out, rather than to just get so involved into something and allow us to commit, potentially years of our lives to these situations, which, maybe deep down we know is not in our highest and best interests. So that really seems to be the message of what Spirit has to be saying right now. It truly embrace who we are, and not lie to ourselves. That they say the most successful people in the world do not lie to themselves. And that's very true. The more honest we could be with our own selves, the more impervious we are to being lied to. And yeah, so far a very beautiful message. Okay, let's go to the next element. It is the element of fire, which is represented by the wand. It can represent our drives, ambitions, desires, things of that nature. And let's see what is influencing our fire element. Wow, the moon. Okay. So, we have a lot of solar placements in that first one, and we have this lunar placement. Well, and then we also have the moon with that third decan of Aquarius. So we got the moon coming up again with our fire. Now, it seems to me that it's sort of reiterating what we have learned with the spirit of placement, or with the placement of spirit. It's really about, as we look towards our drives, our ambitions, our desires, whatever it is that we're searching for, to really ask ourselves those deep questions. You know, is this really what I want? Is this really in my best interests? Is this really going to serve me in the way that it needs to serve me? Because even in the upright position, the moon could represent also some self-deception, or perhaps maybe some self-deception which is now being brought to light. But again, I would say it would also represent that, you know, even in our fire element, in our drives and ambitions, we could have deceived ourselves, which also makes sense because, you know, here we are with the element of spirit saying that you know, there was this sort of deceptive energy happening. So again, it's always about being true to ourselves. You know, am I really doing what I need to be doing? Are these goals that I'm setting for myself, are these goals that I'm setting for myself, and is what I'm setting for myself really what I want? Am I really working towards what I want and what I need? Or am I perhaps maybe living someone else's story? Am I the main character of my own story, or am I following someone else's prescribed path? That moon would really suggest that we need to bring a lot of those things to light. Yeah, even in our element of fire. So not only in the element of spirit, but also in the element of fire, it's saying really look inwards and really ask ourselves, what is it that we truly need? Okay, let's move along. Let's see what the astrology die have to say to that. Saturn in Leo in the 11th house. Wow. So we're having a lot of Aquarius energy. We are having a lot of lunar energy. Okay, Saturn in Leo in the 11th house. Okay, let's re-roll for the decan. Okay, so we got that third decan of Leo. Okay, let me line this up really quick. Okay, so we got that third decan of Leo, and yeah, it's a Lord of Valor. It's that Seven of Wands energy. And what we're looking at with that is, yeah. So that's really about standing our ground, holding our ground, and with it being related to the 11th house, which would have to deal with sort of the community at large, or like, let's say, co-workers or our extended social networks, even online endeavors. Perhaps, you know, we were feeling that maybe we had to defend ourselves in some way. We were attracting a lot of attention, and we were at this point where, especially with Saturn being the influencing planet on that, we were at this point to where we were attracting a lot of attention, and, you know, Saturn comes in and it's basically saying to set up those boundaries. Not only to set up boundaries, but to also, I would say, to progress from beyond this sort of stalemate that we've been at, is to establish some type of routine. Establish boundaries with perhaps our co-workers, or not necessarily our co-workers, but let's say with the community at large, so that we don't feel so infiltrated from around all the sides. And yeah, it looks as though, you know, yeah, with what we were doing, we were attracting a lot of attention. And that caused us to really also reflect on ourselves as well. And that could also relate back to this Aquarius energy too, with that self-deception. So we have, it's almost kind of like I said, you know, between these first two elements, we have a lot of the same themes. You know, we have this Aquarius energy here, which is influenced by the moon, that third decan. And then we also have the element of fire influenced by the moon in the 11th house, which is also that Aquarius energy. So yeah, it's really, again, about looking deep within ourselves. And also, not only that, but being able to, actually also here with Leo and the sun, the sun influences Leo, and then we have the sun right here. So a lot of sun and moon energy actually too. It's almost like no matter where we go, we are forced to really ask ourselves who we are as an individual, and to ask ourselves what our core beliefs are. But again, no matter where we're at right now, it seems as though we've also learned a lot of those lessons too. Saturn, as much as a taskmaster that Saturn is, Saturn is there to teach us lessons. And I would say with this inverted 10 of Swords energy too, and with the worst being over, at least in the spirit, it would suggest that Saturn has, or I should say, we have learned the lessons of Saturn. A very sort of balanced and, I guess, sort of a pragmatic reading, so to speak. Yes, interesting. Okay, let's move along. So now we go to air, which is represented by the sword. It can represent our intellectual endeavors, our communicative efforts, learning, communication, like I said. Also influences the throat chakra. So let's see, what is influencing the element of air? Okay, so we got the Five of Cups. Okay. So that Five of Cups energy, it's the Lord of loss of pleasure. It's when, and it's also influenced by the planet Mars. So it's almost like when we are being too hard on ourselves, perhaps in our communicative efforts, perhaps in our intellectual pursuits, we got to the point to where, we were our own worst critic. And especially with that air energy going, it's very easy to kind of get trapped in our heads, and to really begin to second guess ourselves, and to begin to doubt ourselves because we become trapped in our heads. I think also, and also with this third decan of Leo energy there too, that Lord of Valor, that's also influenced by the planet Mars. And then again, we have this first house energy too, which is influenced by Mars. So the dominant planets that seem to be popping up is not only the sun and moon, but also Mars. And so it's really about exploring our individuality, and also redefining our individuality, and making sure that it is in alignment with our deepest emotions as well. So and of course the lesson of the Five of Cups is really about not being so hard on ourselves. It's really about also being able to forgive ourselves as well. And perhaps, with that popping up in the element of air, we really need to communicate that. And if we don't have the tools to communicate that, then it might be a good time to go back and learn to get the tools on how to communicate that. We're only human, no one is perfect, and we're all doing the best that we can. So like I said, it's really easy to get into the habit of second guessing ourselves, and to really be overly hard on ourselves. But really, each of these cards, whether they are positive or negative, they all have a counterbalance. They all have a lesson to learn. And let's see what the astrology die have to say to that. Okay, so we got the moon in Sagittarius in the third house. Again, a lot of lunar energy popping up too. Okay, so moon, Sagittarius, third house. Let's re-roll for the decan. All right, we got a 9. So we are in the 3rd decan of Sagittarius in the 3rd house. Okay. Yeah. So that 3rd decan of Sagittarius is the Lord of Oppression. It's the 10 of Wands energy, and that particular tarot card is also influenced by Saturn. So again, a lot of Saturnian energy, a lot of Sun and Moon, a lot of Mars popping up. Yeah, really interesting. We seem to be getting a lot of these same sort of themes happening with all of these elements. And okay, so that 3rd decan of Sagittarius, that Lord of Oppression, that 10 of Wands energy, where it would make a lot of sense that it would amplify that 5 of Cups energy too. What it's suggesting is that on an emotional level, we've been very burdened by our emotions. That 10 of Wands energy, it's about carrying that burden. And so that's what we've kind of been feeling, and especially in the element of air. So maybe we've been feeling too emotionally burdened to even communicate what we need to communicate. Maybe we've been feeling too emotionally burdened that it has allowed our mind to become a little bit scattered. We haven't been able to really have that clarity, and especially with that year of 2025, the year of the snake, a lot of us have been shedding our skin. A lot of us have been going through a lot of things. So it would make a lot of sense, when you go through such a period of such, I would say, almost catastrophic transition and almost catastrophic change, that our emotions would get to a point to where it would kind of jam the system, especially when it comes to the element of air. When our emotions can sort of override our sense of logic, and we don't have the tools to be able to deal with it on an intellectual level, because pretty much it feels like the whole world is coming down on us. Everything is just crashing down on us. And with that 10 of Wands energy too, that is when Saturn starts to become overbearing. Here Saturn has a very healthy, or I should say it's represented very in a more healthy manner for that, because it's really about either setting up a routine or forming boundaries and being able to express that particular energy. But here, especially with this 5 of Cups, and you multiply those two together, and especially with the moon being the influencing planet for that, it would imply that that's where Saturn becomes a bit more overbearing. So on one hand, it's good to have routines and boundaries, and on another hand, we can also become a little bit too encumbered when we have so many things coming down upon us. Let's see. But really, just as things could become a little bit too over encumbered, we can also use the lessons of Saturn, which is basically, kind of taking things day by day, establishing a daily routine. We can also use that to be able to slowly untangle and unwind a lot of our emotions, so that we can eventually be able to process them and articulate them in the ways that we need. All right. Let's see. Let's keep on going. So now we got the element of earth, which is represented by the pentacles, and it can represent our material wealth, our spiritual wealth, acquisitions, our sense of security, the solid ground we stand upon, all those types of things. So what is influencing the element of earth? All right, so we got the inverted hermit. Now, yeah, okay. So with that inverted hermit, it can suggest that we probably didn't listen to that sort of good advice that we needed to listen to. And it can also, let's see. Actually, this is one of those moments where it can actually mean a couple of different things. Yeah, that hermit in the upright position, it's really more about isolation and learning the lessons in isolation. In the inverted position, it could also represent maybe not necessarily not heeding the good advice, but it can also represent a time of really sort of coming out of our shell too. And actually, that seems to be a little bit more of what I'm getting for this particular reading. Yeah, especially with the worst being over. So, yeah. So essentially, what happened was a little bit of both. As the past year was happening, as all these things were coming down upon us, and as we felt sort of overburdened and encumbered with a lot of things, we had a lot of those moments where maybe we wished that we had listened to that good advice, or maybe we wished we had taken a different path. And especially with this related to the element of Pentacles, that could definitely suggest that perhaps we either lost a job or could have even moved, something to that nature, as we were going through it. But as we're coming out of it, now it's saying that it is time to also come out of our isolation. It's a little bit of having sort of a tower moment where everything kind of crumbles and falls down. And now we are looking for something to where it's time to just get back out there. Things may not have gone according to plan. However, when things don't go according to plan, and when things do crumble down around us, that's also a good time to really begin to rebuild. And that's also what I'm getting from this. So let's see what the astrology die have to say about that. What do they have to reconfirm or offer their advice? Jupiter in Aries in the 4th house. Wow, okay. So that's the first time Jupiter popped up in this reading. Let's re-roll for the decan. Okay, 5, middle decan. All right. So there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Now, whatever happened, whatever causes upheaval in the element of earth, maybe in our finances or perhaps in our employment, whatever caused that, it is now going to be replaced with more abundance. I would say, especially with that 4th house energy, that would have probably suggested that perhaps we could have lost our home, or we could have lost our sense of home, something to that nature. However, now we're in the middle decan of Aries. That's that 3 of Wands energy. That's the Lord of established strength, and basically the it's a card with the ships. The ships are starting to sail back in. It's starting to bring good tidings from elsewhere. It means that now the rebuilding process has begun, and now we are going to start to see the results of that rebuilding process, the results of, especially in the material plane of what happened. That inverted hermit card was the past. All those regrets that we had of the past, perhaps maybe not listening to our intuition, perhaps maybe not taking the advice that we needed to take. All of that is in the past. And again, it seems to be the major theme of this reading and of getting out of 2025 in general. It's really about leaving the past in the past, because look at what's coming in. We've got new ships coming in. We have new opportunities coming in. We may have lost a home, but guess what? Now we're going to gain another home in addition to that. We may be moving into a place of our own. There's a possibility of even buying a house with this. That Jupiter is about expansion. That Jupiter is a benefactor. And so when we have all this expansive and positive energy coming in for that fourth house, it could definitely be that we're moving into a more fortuitous situation regarding the home life, and especially that Cancer and that Earth energy mixed together. It's really about creating a solid foundation. So whatever we went through in the past, however we felt, any of that kind of stuff, we are, like I said, it's the year of the snake. It's time to leave it in the past, and it's time to move on, because there's so much coming in that is going to be so much better for us. And we don't need to really worry about where we've been. It's we just need to really focus on where we're going. All right, let's move along. So to the last element of water, which is represented by the cups. All right. Okay, love, what is influencing the element of water? So we have the inverted Queen of Wands. Okay, well, with all this lunar energy influencing and causing us to question a lot of our drives, ambitions, and even a lot of the things that's coming into spirit, it would make sense that our water, which represents our emotions and intuition, it would make sense that it would be an inverted Queen of Wands. So this is really asking us to look at the shadow side of our sacred feminine. That really seems to also be the heart of this message, is especially with all this lunar energy that's been popping up. And let's go back to the original reading of Spirit. So we have that third decan of Aquarius, which is really about deception, and it seems like the whole thing started with our own self-deception. We needed to integrate our own shadows on an emotional level, because we were not in touch with that. And this year was really teaching us that sacred feminine, or I should say the shadow side of that sacred feminine. This year was really about, pushing us to the limits to really begin to explore that. And I personally can can relate to that very, very much. So the shadow side of the sacred feminine. That's some really heavy stuff. Especially on an emotional level. And when we haven't addressed the shadow side of that, it can also influence not only our emotions, but it can also cloud our intuition. So perhaps, this entire year, we felt a little bit cut off from that. We felt like we were not at our best intuitively. And it would make sense because with us, some of us potentially losing a house, or perhaps maybe even having to move or something like that. When you lose your home, you kind of go into a bit of survival mode there, and especially thrown in with all this other stuff, which caused us to sort of maybe doubt who we are. It will definitely it will definitely teach us a lesson about exploring those shadow aspects of ourselves. Yeah, this was, for me personally, this was a year that Hecate made her presence known in my life in a very strong way. Excuse me for a moment. Let me get rid of those cards. So that, I would say that's definitely exploring the shadow side of our feminine. Let me see what the astrology die have to say to that. Okay. So, we have Pluto in Aquarius in the 4th house. Wow. Okay. Oops. Let's see. Aquarius, 4th house. Let's re-roll for the decan. All right, 11. Okay. Let me line this up. So, yeah. So we have another 3rd decan of Aquarius. That's some more deception. And wow. And especially with Pluto there. Yeah. So a lot of underworld energy, a lot of shadow aspects coming out. We have the shadow aspect of the inverted Queen of Wands. We have Pluto coming up, which is basically, you know, this massive transformation. And yeah, that, you know, those in conjunction would be a definite revelation within our lives. So not only is the rest of the reading sort of telling us to really look at, you know, inward for our emotional state, but it, you know, the icing on the cake is sort of this Pluto with this inverted Queen of Wands energy. You know, we're having sort of this massive transformation, you know, combined with really looking into our shadow aspects. And again, with that 3rd decan of Aquarius, it's also saying, you know, to be completely honest with ourselves so that we are not deceiving ourselves. And again, we're back in the 4th house there, which is Cancer, which is the home, the hearth, all of that. You know, it's really about, it feels like it's a major transformation of not only who we are as an individual, but also what does family mean to us? What does it mean to have a stable foundation, not only in the element of earth, but also in the element of water? And yeah, massive transformations are happening. And I would say with all this lunar energy, and yeah, with all of this lunar energy all throughout the reading, that it would be the element of water, or the cups, that would really, it's really sort of the linchpin of the whole reading. You know, everything started, or I should say, everything starts and ends with that shadow transformation. Everything is about really coming to terms with our shadow aspects, with that deep underworld energy. And yeah, we've definitely been going through all of that, especially with the spirit reading, the inverted Ten of Swords. Now, and again, like the Ten of Swords would suggest, is that the worst is over. All of this stuff is a huge lesson. Here, let me get this out of the way. All of this is a huge lesson to us, and it really makes sense because 2025 was a huge lesson. And again, this is a timeless collective reading, so no matter when you pick up on this, it's when it's, you know, it's meant for you. But it's all a huge lesson. But whatever it is, at the end of it, it's suggesting that the worst is over. Let's see. Okay, we also have, let's see, there and there. Okay, 30. Yeah. Okay, 30, 60, no, 30, 60. Okay, so we have a sextile formed there. And let's see, 30, 60, another sextile formed there. So we have, yeah, we got two sextiles formed between the element of spirit, fire, and air. Okay, and actually that would also imply, let's see, yeah, we got the 120 there. Yeah, that would also imply the trine for that as well. So we have a trine formed between fire and air, and we also have these two elements forming a sextile with spirit. So, what does it all mean? It means that these three themes are more in synergy with each other. And the fact that spirit is in the middle between it, the spirit amplifies that. So it really means that the worst is over for this sense of, I wouldn't call it self-loathing, but the sense of being hard on ourselves. It's really trying to reiterate the fact that the worst is over for that. And it's also trying to reiterate the fact that the worst is over for really analyzing who we are and really coming to grips with what we want with our desires and drives and ambition. And also between the element of fire and air, that these two were really connected. So it was having, the doubts in our drives led to also it led to us sort of really questioning who we are. And as these get cleared up, one will affect the other in a major way. I would say that this will help out this card more than the other way around. So, the more we look into our emotional nature, the more we will learn to realize, to forgive ourselves and to not be so hard on ourselves. And again, there's the moon right there, and there's the moon right there. So it's really diving deep into our own inner psyche, our hidden drives and desires, our unconscious mind. And of course, at the core of it, with the water element, here we have, we're basically having, all these shadow aspects and all these underworld aspects really, really coming up in our core. Let's see, what else we got? Yeah, let's see, 5. Almost a conjunction there, not quite. And let's see. Yeah. All right, so that seems to be about it in terms of... Oh, wait a minute. Oh, we have another... Let's see, 30... Yeah, we have another trine right there. How did I miss that? Okay, so we got another trine between the element of spirit and the element of water. Yeah, that would also make a lot of sense. So spirit is influencing both of these elements and also water. It's having the greatest influence on water. So it wants to say that whatever we've been going on, this deep transformation on the emotional level, it really wants to reiterate that the worst is over. That it's really about moving on from that self-deception. We already put in the work to that. Let's see, what else? All right. I think I'm going to take it over to the extended reading from here on out. If you're interested in that, then drop by my Discord. It is free for the first 100 members who sign up for my Discord. We are about 20% filled right now. So yeah, there is definitely room to welcome you aboard the extended reading. I'll be using oracle cards to get some further clarification on it. And there's also a lot of other bells and whistles that I put on the Discord server. as well. And also, if you're really into what I'm doing and you would like to request a private reading, you can do that as well from the Discord server. So, thank you for joining me on today's reading. It's been great having you, and may Hecate illuminate your path and guide you at the crossroads.